There is a silent struggle that good people carry every day, and most of them don't even realize it. In a world that rewards loudness, aggression, and selfish ambition, being good often feels like a disadvantage. You give your best. You show up with honesty. You treat people with fairness and patience. And yet, instead of being respected, you are tested. Instead of being valued, you are taken for granted. The Stoics understood this reality deeply. They knew that virtue comes with a cost. Being good does not always bring applause. It does not always bring reward. Sometimes it brings resistance. Sometimes it brings loneliness. Sometimes it brings suffering. And this is where many people become confused. They ask themselves, if I'm doing the right thing, why does it hurt so much? Modern society tells you that goodness should be easy, that if you are kind, people will return kindness, that if you are honest, life will be fair. But Stoicism never promised that. Stoicism teaches something far more honest and far more powerful. It teaches that goodness is not a strategy to control outcomes. It is a discipline to control yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations not as a motivational book, but as a reminder to himself. A reminder that being just, patient, and virtuous would often be inconvenient. A reminder that people might misunderstand him, oppose him, or even betray him. Yet he chose goodness anyway, not because it was rewarded, but because it was right. This is the cost of being good. You will often be the one who forgives first. You will often be the one who walks away quietly. You will often be the one who feels deeply in a world that avoids responsibility. And if you are not prepared for this cost, bitterness will slowly replace virtue. Today, we are going to explore 8 powerful Stoic principles that reveal the hidden price of being good, and more importantly, how to carry that cost without losing yourself. These principles are not meant to make you softer. They are meant to make you stronger, calm, grounded, unshakable. Before we begin, take a moment to settle your mind. Let go of distractions. This is not content to rush through. This is a reminder for the part of you that is tired of doing the right thing and feeling unseen. If this message resonates with you already, support this work by liking the video. Share your thoughts in the comments as we go, and subscribe for more Stoic wisdom that strengthens the soul. And most importantly, stay with me until the end, because one of these principles may change how you carry your goodness forever. Now, let us begin. Principle number 1, being good means accepting that you will be misunderstood. One of the first and most painful costs of being good is misunderstanding. When you choose virtue, patience, and fairness, many people will not see your intentions. They will misinterpret your silence as weakness, your restraint as fear, your kindness as an invitation to cross boundaries. The Stoics warned us about this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Begin the morning by saying to thyself, I shall meet with busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial." He did not write this to become bitter. He wrote it to become prepared. When you are good, truly good, you do not react the way people expect. You do not explode when insulted. You do not seek revenge when wronged. You do not announce your sacrifices. And because of this, people often create their own stories about you. They assume your calm means you agree. They assume your patience means you don't care. They assume your forgiveness means you forgot. This misunderstanding can hurt deeply, especially if you care about being seen correctly. You may feel the urge to explain yourself, to defend your intentions, to correct every false narrative. But Stoicism teaches restraint here, not because truth does not matter, but because not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Epictetus reminds us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. This is not an insult, it is a warning. If you live by virtue, there will be moments where people judge you unfairly. And if your peace depends on correcting every judgment, you will never be at peace. Being good does not mean being transparent to everyone. It means being honest with yourself. Your character is not proven by how loudly you explain it, but by how consistently you live it. Over time, actions speak. But even then, some will still misunderstand you, and that is something you must accept. This is where many good people break. They become exhausted from being misread. They grow resentful. They think, why should I keep doing the right thing if no one sees it? But Stoicism answers clearly. You do not act virtuously to be seen. You act virtuously to remain aligned with yourself. The moment you allow misunderstanding to turn you bitter, you have paid too high a price. You have traded your inner clarity for external approval, and that trade is never worth it. Being misunderstood is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. Often it is a sign that you are doing something rare. Calm strength confuses those who survive on drama. Quiet integrity unsettles those who rely on manipulation. So when you feel misjudged, pause. Ask yourself one simple question. Have I acted according to my values? If the answer is yes, then let the misunderstanding pass like weather. It does not define you. It does not diminish you. The Stoic accepts misunderstanding as part of the cost of goodness, not as a reason to abandon it. Because once you stop needing to be understood by everyone, you gain something far more valuable: inner freedom. And that freedom is where true strength begins. Principle number 2. Being good requires letting go of control over outcomes. One of the hardest lessons a good person must learn is this: you can do everything right and still not get the outcome you hoped for. You can act with honesty, patience, and integrity and still be rejected, overlooked, or treated unfairly. This is not a failure of goodness. This is the reality of life. The Stoics were very clear about this. Epictetus said, "Some things are up to us and some things are not." This single idea sits at the core of Stoic philosophy, yet it is one of the most difficult truths to accept. Because when you are good, you naturally expect goodness to return. When it doesn't, frustration begins to grow. Many people become bitter not because they are weak, but because they are attached to outcomes they cannot control. They believe that if they are kind, others must respond kindly. If they are loyal, others must be loyal in return. If they are patient, life must reward that patience. But Stoicism teaches a different standard. Your responsibility is the action, not the result. Being good means choosing virtue without guarantees. It means doing what is right even when it leads to discomfort, even when it leads to loss, even when it leads to silence instead of appreciation. This is where most people give up. They say, "What's the point?" The Stoic answer is simple but demanding. The point is your character. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter." Not because outcomes are meaningless, but because they are unreliable. When you tie your peace to results, you hand your inner stability over to chance, to other people's decisions, and to circumstances you cannot command. Good people often struggle here because they care deeply. They want harmony, they want fairness, they want their effort to mean something. But the Stoic does not confuse effort with entitlement. You are not owed a specific response because you acted well. You are only responsible for whether your actions were just. This principle is painful because it forces you to confront a hard truth. Life is not a transaction. You do not insert goodness and receive happiness in equal measure. Sometimes goodness is followed by hardship. Sometimes integrity isolates you. Sometimes doing the right thing closes doors instead of opening them. Yet this is exactly why Stoicism values virtue above all else. Because virtue is the only thing no one can take from you. Outcomes can be stolen. Recognition can be denied. Relationships can end. but your ability to choose rightly, even under pressure, remains yours. When you let go of controlling outcomes, something powerful happens. You stop negotiating with your values. You stop asking, "Will this be worth it?" and start asking, "Is this right?" That shift changes everything. You become steady, less reactive, less disappointed. This does not mean you become passive or indifferent. It means you act fully, but without attachment. You give your best, but you release the need to be rewarded for it. You speak truth, but you accept that not everyone will welcome it. You show kindness, but you do not beg for appreciation. The cost of being good is learning to live with uncertainty. The reward is inner stability. When outcomes no longer control your emotions, you become difficult to manipulate and impossible to break. A good person who understands this principle does not quit goodness when life becomes unfair. They deepen it, not because they expect life to change, but because they refuse to let life change who they are. That is Stoic strength. Principle number 3, being good often means standing alone. One of the quiet costs of being good is isolation, not the dramatic kind, but the subtle kind that slowly settles in when you realize that your values no longer match the crowd, when you choose integrity over convenience, restraint over impulse, and truth over popularity. You may find yourself walking a path that fewer people are willing to take. The Stoics were never concerned with fitting in. They were concerned with living rightly. Seneca wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." Yet he also understood that kindness, when paired with wisdom, does not always lead to companionship. Sometimes it leads to distance. Being good does not mean agreeing with everyone. It does not mean blending into the noise or bending your standards to avoid conflict. Often it means choosing what is right even when it costs you belonging. And for many people, this is one of the hardest sacrifices to make. The desire to be accepted runs deep. When you refuse to gossip, people may stop including you in conversations. When you refuse to participate in unethical behavior, you may be labeled difficult. When you set boundaries instead of pleasing everyone, you may be called cold or distant. These labels sting, especially when your intentions are pure. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Notice what he does not add. He does not say, "unless it makes you lonely." The Stoic accepts loneliness as a possible consequence of virtue, not as a reason to abandon it. Standing alone forces you to confront yourself. Without the comfort of constant agreement, you are left with your own thoughts, your own standards, and your own conscience. This can feel uncomfortable at first, but it is also where clarity is born. When you are no longer distracted by the need for approval, you begin to hear your inner voice more clearly. Many people stay in groups, relationships, and environments that erode their character simply because they fear being alone. They laugh at jokes that feel wrong. They stay silent when they should speak. They compromise values to maintain connection. Over time, this quiet self-betrayal creates a deeper loneliness than solitude ever could. The Stoic chooses a different path. He understands that solitude is not the enemy. Loss of self is. Being alone with integrity is far better than being surrounded by people while living in conflict with your own values. This does not mean withdrawing from the world or rejecting human connection. Stoicism is not isolationism. It is selectivity. You learn to value quality over quantity, depth over approval. You become comfortable walking alone for a while, trusting that alignment will eventually attract the right company. And even if it doesn't, you remain whole. Because your worth is not measured by how many people stand beside you, but by how firmly you stand by what is right. Being good will sometimes make you the odd one out. It will sometimes place you in quiet rooms while others gather elsewhere. But in that quiet, your character strengthens, your convictions deepen, your peace stabilizes. The Stoic does not fear standing alone, because he knows he is never without himself. And when you learn to stand alone, without resentment, you gain a freedom that few ever experience. Principle number 4. Being good demands emotional discipline, not emotional suppression. Many people misunderstand what it truly costs to be good. They think it means being endlessly patient, endlessly forgiving, and endlessly calm without ever feeling anger, pain, or frustration. That belief is dangerous. Stoicism does not ask you to kill your emotions. It asks you to govern them. The Stoics knew that emotions are natural responses, not moral failures. What matters is not what you feel, but what you do with what you feel. Epictetus made this clear when he taught that emotions arise from judgments. Change the judgment and the emotion loses its power. Being good means feeling deeply without acting destructively. It means experiencing anger without becoming cruel, feeling sadness without collapsing into self-pity, feeling disappointment without turning bitter. This is one of the most exhausting disciplines because it requires constant self-awareness. Good people often carry more emotional weight than others because they care. They notice injustice, they feel the pain of others, they reflect on their own mistakes. But without discipline, this sensitivity can turn into emotional chaos. You begin to react instead of respond. You say things you later regret. You overextend yourself and feel drained. Marcus Aurelius warned himself of this when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Emotional discipline is the practice of remembering this truth in the heat of the moment. Being good does not mean you never feel wronged. It means you choose not to let that feeling control your behavior. You pause. You breathe. You question the story your mind is telling you. You ask, is this reaction aligned with who I want to be? This pause is costly. It takes effort. It takes restraint. It takes humility. Reacting is easy. Discipline is not. That is why so few people practice it consistently. But this is where Stoic goodness separates itself from emotional weakness. Suppressing emotions leads to resentment. Exploding emotions leads to regret. Stoicism offers a third path: acknowledgement without surrender. You recognize the emotion, name it, and then decide how to act. This discipline protects your relationships and your self-respect. You stop saying things just to release tension. You stop using honesty as an excuse for cruelty. You stop confusing emotional expression with emotional control. The cost of this discipline is that you often carry feelings quietly. Others may think you are unaffected. They may not realize the internal work you are doing to stay balanced. But that inner labor builds a strength that does not depend on circumstances. A good person with emotional discipline does not need to vent constantly. They do not need to prove their pain. They process it, learn from it, and move forward with clarity. This is not emotional coldness, it is emotional maturity, and it is one of the heaviest but most rewarding costs of being good. Principle number 5. Being good means refusing to become bitter. One of the greatest dangers faced by good people is bitterness, not because they are weak, but because they give so much. When kindness is met with disrespect, when honesty is met with manipulation, and when patience is met with ingratitude, bitterness begins to feel justified. It whispers, "You tried. Look where it got you." The Stoics treated bitterness as a quiet poison. It does not explode like anger. It corrodes slowly. It changes how you see people. It hardens your heart. And over time, it turns virtue into suspicion. Seneca warned, "Anger, if not restrained, is often more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." Bitterness is anger that has learned to hide. Being good does not protect you from being wronged. It exposes you to it. And if you are not careful, repeated disappointment can slowly reshape your character. You begin to withdraw warmth. You stop trusting. You stop giving the benefit of the doubt. You may still act politely, but internally, you are closed. Stoicism does not ask you to stay naive. It asks you to stay clear. There is a difference. Clarity learns from experience without becoming resentful. Bitterness learns nothing and punishes everyone. Refusing bitterness is costly because it requires forgiveness without reconciliation, understanding without approval, and acceptance without denial. It means you acknowledge that you were hurt, but you refuse to let that hurt define your future actions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This is not passive, it is powerful. When you choose not to become what hurt you, you protect your inner freedom. Good people often feel tempted to harden themselves just to survive. They say, "I need to stop caring." But Stoicism does not teach numbness. It teaches selective care. You do not close your heart. You strengthen your boundaries. Bitterness feels like strength because it builds walls. But walls also block light. The Stoic builds filters, not walls. You remain open to what is good while refusing to dwell on what is corrosive. This requires daily discipline. Bitterness does not disappear on its own. It must be questioned, released, and replaced with perspective. You remind yourself that other people's actions reflect their character, not your worth. Being good means choosing to stay principled in a world that often rewards selfishness. That choice will test you again and again. But each time you refuse bitterness, you reinforce your identity. You are not good because life is fair. You are good because you choose to be. That choice, repeated over time, becomes unshakable strength. Principle number 6, being good requires setting boundaries without guilt. One of the most misunderstood aspects of being good is the belief that goodness requires endless availability, endless tolerance, and endless sacrifice. Many good people fall into this trap. They confuse virtue with self-neglect. They believe that saying no makes them selfish, that creating distance makes them cruel, and that protecting themselves makes them unkind. The Stoics strongly disagreed. Stoicism teaches that self-respect is not the opposite of goodness, it is a requirement for it. Epictetus was clear when he said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Often, this foolishness looks like refusing what others expect from you. Being good means knowing where your responsibility ends. You are responsible for your actions, not for managing other people's emotions, expectations, or reactions. When you try to carry what is not yours, resentment begins to grow. Boundaries are how you prevent that resentment from poisoning your character. Good people often struggle with guilt when they set limits. They replay conversations in their minds. They wonder if they were too harsh, too distant, or too firm. But Stoicism reframes this entirely. A boundary is not an attack. It is a declaration of what you can and cannot carry. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." If you cannot say no, you are not acting freely. You are reacting to pressure, and a life lived under constant pressure slowly erodes virtue. Setting boundaries may disappoint people who benefited from your lack of them. They may accuse you of changing, of becoming cold, of being difficult. This is part of the cost. But Stoicism reminds us that being good is not about being liked. It is about being aligned. A clear boundary allows your goodness to remain genuine. Without it, kindness turns into obligation, patience turns into tolerance of disrespect, and generosity turns into depletion. The Stoic sets boundaries calmly, without anger, without over-explanation, without guilt. You do not need to justify every limit you set. Your time, energy, and peace are finite resources. Protecting them is an act of wisdom. This does not mean abandoning compassion. It means applying it intelligently. You help where you can without sacrificing your integrity. You listen without absorbing every burden. You give without draining yourself dry. Being good with boundaries is difficult because it requires emotional strength. You must tolerate discomfort. You must allow others to be unhappy with your choices, but that discomfort is temporary. The damage caused by ignoring boundaries is lasting. Stoicism teaches that a well-ordered soul needs structure. Boundaries are part of that structure. They allow you to remain steady, present, and principled over the long term. The cost of setting boundaries is temporary tension. The reward is sustainable goodness. Principle number 7. Being good means acting with integrity, even when no one is watching. Perhaps the most invisible cost of being good is that your true character is rarely acknowledged. In a world obsessed with recognition, approval, and praise, acting with integrity often feels thankless. You do the right thing quietly, without applause. You keep promises that no one sees. You honor commitments that others would ignore if it served them. And yet, this is the core of Stoic virtue. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Notice that he doesn't instruct us to announce it. He doesn't tell us to seek validation. He tells us simply to act rightly, regardless of recognition. This is the cost, a life of quiet, sometimes invisible effort. Being good is easier when others are watching. Praise feels like reinforcement, approval feels like motivation, and acknowledgement feels like a reward. But Stoics understood that true virtue is tested when no one is looking, when nobody will applaud your honesty, when nobody will thank you for your patience, when nobody notices your restraint. This is where many good people falter. They begin to measure the value of their actions by the reactions they get. They start to expect gratitude or respect or reciprocity, and when it doesn't arrive, disappointment follows. That disappointment can quietly eat away at the soul, turning virtue into bitterness. Acting with integrity without external validation requires discipline. You must internalize your standards so completely that they no longer depend on anyone else's opinion. Your compass becomes self-contained. Your sense of right and wrong becomes your guide, not public recognition. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." The Stoic does not wait for the world to validate him. He begins by defining his own character and then living it daily in every choice, in every small action. This principle also teaches resilience. When life feels unfair, when your efforts go unnoticed, or when people exploit your goodness, you do not despair. You know that your virtue is intact, even if the world ignores it. Integrity becomes your reward. And over time, this silent consistency builds a strength that no praise or criticism can shake. The cost is clear: invisibility, misunderstanding, and sometimes loneliness. But the reward is far greater than temporary recognition. A life lived with integrity produces inner peace, stability, and self-respect that cannot be taken away. Being good is not about visibility. It's about alignment. It's about showing up, doing what is right, and walking away without needing acknowledgement. And that is a form of strength few will ever understand, but all who practice it will deeply feel. This principle demands courage. Courage to continue when others take shortcuts, when others lie, cheat, or avoid responsibility. Courage to maintain honesty when deception is easier. Courage to act rightly, even in obscurity. And that courage, quietly exercised, is one of the greatest costs and greatest rewards of being good. Principle number 8. Being good means embracing the long term, even when it costs you in the moment. The final principle, and perhaps the most demanding, is understanding that being good is rarely rewarded immediately. Virtue is not a short-term strategy. It is a lifelong commitment. The world around you often favors the fast, the loud, and the self-serving. The good person must act against this current repeatedly without expecting instant payoff. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." Goodness is not measured by popularity, wealth, or immediate results. It is measured by consistency, by the courage to choose right over easy, by the willingness to pay the hidden costs now for rewards that may only manifest years later. The cost of being good in the short term is often frustration, misunderstanding, and even loss. You may miss opportunities to take shortcuts, gain quick approval, or retaliate for slights. You may be overlooked for recognition or advancement because others prioritize cunning over honesty. You may feel alone, and sometimes the path feels heavier than you imagined. Yet, Stoicism teaches patience in this process. The Stoic knows that the effects of virtue compound over time. Every act of honesty strengthens your character. Every act of restraint sharpens your judgment. Every act of kindness creates ripples that extend far beyond immediate observation. This is a principle the world often fails to reward, but the soul deeply treasures. Epictetus said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen, and you will go on well." In other words, embrace the journey of goodness for its own sake. Accept that the price may be discomfort, isolation, or even loss, but never abandon integrity in pursuit of temporary comfort. Being good is a long game. It requires vision, discipline, and faith in the unseen. You plant seeds of virtue in the present, knowing that the harvest may be years away. You resist the temptation to compromise principles for instant gratification because you understand that the real measure of a person is not what they gain immediately, but what they build over a lifetime. The cost is patience. The cost is endurance. The cost is accepting that the world may not acknowledge your efforts right now, but the reward is immeasurable. A life aligned with truth, a character that cannot be shaken, and an inner peace that no external circumstance can disturb. Goodness is rarely convenient. It is rarely easy, but it is always worth it. The Stoics remind us that the highest good is not in recognition, not in reward, but in the steadfast cultivation of virtue itself. To be good is to endure, to act rightly despite cost, and to remain unwavering, even when the world does not see or appreciate your efforts. Conclusion: the cost of being good is clear. Misunderstanding, letting go of control, standing alone, practicing emotional discipline, resisting bitterness, setting boundaries, acting with integrity in obscurity, and embracing the long term. These are not small sacrifices. They are the weight carried by anyone who chooses virtue in a world that often rewards compromise. Yet this cost is also the source of profound strength, because when you accept it, you no longer act for reward, recognition, or approval. You act for the alignment of your soul. You act because being good is your identity, not your strategy. You act because virtue itself is a life worth living, no matter the price. Being good is not simple. It is not comfortable. It is not always acknowledged, but it is powerful. And when you embrace these 8 principles, you learn to carry the cost with dignity, resilience, and quiet confidence. You discover that goodness is not a liability, it is a superpower. Remember, Stoic warrior, the world may not always see you. It may not always thank you. It may even challenge or oppose you. But your character, your integrity, and your peace are yours alone. and that is a reward no one can take away. If this video resonated with you, like it now. Share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. Comment your affirmation below. I embrace the cost of being good. And subscribe for more Stoic wisdom to strengthen your mind, your heart, and your life. Being good is a choice. Being good is costly. Being good is powerful. Carry it well.